The early 90s were an incredible time for gamers, especially on the Sega Genesis. While Nintendo had its heavy hitters with Zelda and Mario, Sega was holding its own with titles like Sonic the Hedgehog and Streets of Rage. But there was one game that never quite got the recognition it deserved: Crusader of Centy. Released in 1994 and developed by Nextech, Crusader of Centy takes inspiration from classic action RPGs like The Legend of Zelda, but carves out a unique identity that makes it one of the most underrated titles of its era. As soon as you fire up Crusader of Centy, you're greeted with vibrant visuals and a charming world that pulls you right into its whimsical but surprisingly deep narrative. The game mixes classic top-down action RPG elements with some quirky mechanics that make it stand out, and yet it somehow slipped under the radar when it first launched. Maybe it was due to timing coming late in the Genesis's life cycle, or perhaps it was overshadowed by Sega's heavier hitters. Regardless, Crusader of Centy has earned cult status over the years, and for good reason. Before we move on, hit that subscribe button and stay up to date on more deep dives into retro gaming. Crusader of Centy begins with a classic RPG setup, but it quickly evolves into something much deeper and more engaging than your standard save-the-world narrative. You take control of a young boy named Corona who just turned 14. Right from the get-go, Crusader of Centy immerses you in its charming yet layered world. After inheriting his father's sword, Corona sets off on a journey of self-discovery. At first, the game plays on typical RPG tropes: young hero, quest to defeat monsters, the looming threat of a great evil, but as you progress, the game begins to blur the lines between good and evil. This is where Crusader of Centy shines, offering players a more thought-provoking story than most expected from a 16-bit action RPG. One of the game's most interesting storytelling twists happens early on when Corona loses his ability to speak to humans. This forces him to communicate with animals, which adds a fascinating dynamic to both the gameplay and the narrative, as Corona teams up with various animal companions throughout the adventure. The story dives into themes of understanding and empathy, highlighting that the monsters he's tasked with defeating might not be as evil as they seem. Throughout the game, Corona's journey isn't just about gaining strength or mastering his sword, it's about gaining perspective. As you get deeper into the story, the lines between friend and foe blur, and Corona is left to reconsider his role as a would-be hero. It's a refreshing take on the genre, especially for the time period. The developers managed to tell a story that resonated on an emotional level far beyond what you'd expect from a game about slaying monsters and saving kingdoms. By the end of the adventure, Crusader of Centy has taken players on a narrative journey that feels introspective and thoughtful, tackling themes that were rarely explored in early 90s games. It's a story that sticks with you long after the credits roll, and it's one of the main reasons why fans continue to celebrate this hidden gem. When it comes to gameplay, Crusader of Centy offers a satisfying mix of fast-paced action, exploration, and puzzle solving, all wrapped up in a format that's easy to pick up but hard to put down. At first glance, it might seem like a straightforward top-down action RPG in the vein of The Legend of Zelda, but Crusader of Centy brings a unique flair to the formula, making it stand out as more than just a simple clone. Its blend of traditional RPG mechanics and innovative ideas gives the game a distinct identity, especially for fans of the genre looking for something different. Combat is straightforward but fun. You swing your sword at enemies in real time, dodging their attacks and utilizing Corona's agility to your advantage. Early on, Corona's sword is his main tool for battle, but soon, Crusader of Centy introduces its standout gameplay mechanic: animal companions. Rather than gaining new weapons or magical items, Corona forms bonds with animals that offer unique abilities, which completely change how you approach combat and puzzles. These animals act like magical companions, giving you skills that can be combined for creative results. Each animal's ability feels well integrated into both the combat and exploration aspects of the game, encouraging players to experiment with different combinations to see what works best for various situations. The animals aren't just tacked on gimmicks. They're vital to making progress, with some puzzles requiring specific animals' powers to advance. While the game isn't overly difficult, it strikes a good balance between challenge and accessibility. It's not uncommon to get stuck on a puzzle or a particularly tough enemy, but the game rewards patience and experimentation, never feeling too punishing. The animal companion system ensures that there's always a new way to approach a situation, and it gives the game a dynamic feel that keeps you invested. Finally, the controls in Crusader of Centy are responsive and intuitive, with Corona moving swiftly across the screen. Combat feels fluid, and switching between animal companions is a breeze. For a game of its time, it manages to offer an experience that's both easy to control and layered in complexity. When it comes to the graphics and sound of Crusader of Centy, the game really showcases the best of what the Sega Genesis had to offer in the mid-90s. It's easy to get lost in its colorful, vibrant world, and the soundtrack does an excellent job of setting the tone for each area you explore. Crusader of Centy takes full advantage of the Genesis's color palette to create a world that feels alive and inviting. The game's aesthetic is bright and cheerful, with a wide range of environments that are rich in detail. From lush green forests and peaceful villages to scorching deserts and icy mountaintops, each area feels distinct and memorable. The pixel art is sharp and clean, with an almost cartoon-like quality that makes the game's characters and enemies pop off the screen. You can see the attention to detail in everything from the way Corona swings his sword to the subtle animations of the animal companions as they follow you around. Character sprites are well animated, and while they may not be as detailed as some of the more cutting-edge games of the era, they have a certain charm that fits the game's lighthearted tone. Corona himself is a simple but endearing protagonist, and the design of his animal companions is both cute and functional, making it easy to recognize what each one brings to the table at a glance. The music in Crusader of Centy is one of its most memorable aspects. Composed by Motokazu Shinoda, the soundtrack captures the essence of adventure, with upbeat and catchy tunes that match the energy of the game. Each area of the world is accompanied by its own theme, whether it's the cheerful melody of the starting village, the fast-paced rhythm of a dangerous dungeon, or the mysterious tunes of the more ominous areas you'll explore later in the game. The soundtrack doesn't just serve as background noise, it enhances the atmosphere, drawing you deeper into the experience. Overall, the graphics and sound in Crusader of Centy may not be the most technically advanced on the Genesis, but they're packed with personality. The vibrant visuals, combined with an energetic and catchy soundtrack, create a world that's fun to explore and easy to get lost in. For a game released during the later years of the Genesis, it holds up surprisingly well, making it a joy to revisit for retro gaming fans. The game may not have pushed the hardware to its limits, but it's a perfect example of how strong art direction and memorable music can make a game stand the test of time. Crusader of Centy might not have been a blockbuster hit when it launched in 1994, but over the years it has gained a reputation as one of the hidden gems of the Sega Genesis library. Its initial release flew under the radar for most gamers, largely due to its unfortunate timing. By the time Crusader of Centy hit store shelves, the 16-bit era was winding down, with the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation looming on the horizon. Many gamers were already turning their attention to the promise of next-general 3D graphics, leaving Crusader of Centy in the shadow of the next wave of consoles. For many players, Crusader of Centy became a hidden treasure that they either discovered by chance or through word of mouth. Those who missed it the first time around often found it through emulation or as part of Sega Genesis collections, leading to a resurgence in interest. Today, Crusader of Centy is frequently brought up in discussions of underrated or forgotten classics from the 16-bit era. Over time, Crusader of Centy has become a sought-after collector's item, particularly for Genesis enthusiasts. The game's rarity in the physical market has made complete boxed copies highly valuable, with prices skyrocketing in the retro gaming market. This is a testament to the game's lasting appeal, as more and more players seek to experience it in its original form. Despite not being a major commercial success, Crusader of Centy's reputation has only grown, solidifying its place as a cult classic. Modern reviews and retrospectives have been kind to Crusader of Centy, with many calling it one of the best action RPGs of its time, despite its lack of mainstream recognition. It's often placed alongside other overlooked gems like Beyond Oasis and Landstalker as proof that the Sega Genesis had more to offer than just arcade-style action games. Critics and fans alike appreciate how the game combined heartwarming storytelling with fast-paced gameplay and inventive mechanics, creating an experience that felt both familiar and refreshingly unique. As we reflect on Crusader of Centy today, it's clear that this game was ahead of its time. It didn't just borrow from the greats, Like the Legend of Zelda, it added its own flavor with meaningful narrative themes and gameplay innovations that still feel fresh decades later. For those who have yet to experience it, Crusader of Centy remains a must-play for anyone interested in retro EGs or Sega's 16-bit legacy. Its lasting impact on those who've played it ensures that, while it may have been underappreciated in its time, Crusader of Centy will always be remembered as one of the Genesis's finest hidden gems. Thank you for joining us. If you like this deep dive into the retro world of Crusader of Centy, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, keep questing and keep gaming.